Welcome to Middle Math Academy, Adding and Subtracting Decimals, level number 1. This is part of our differentiated series where we have 5 levels of challenge for every topic. Let's get started. Our learning targets today are I can identify keywords in word problems, and I can add and subtract decimals using a model in the standard algorithm. Go ahead and before we get started, rate yourself 1 through 5 on our learning targets. 1 is the least confident, 5 is the most confident. Go ahead and complete our opening problems, then come back to the video. In our opening problem, we can see that we have 5 holes in our first image. So if we're writing that as a decimal, we can write it as just 5 or 5.0 or 5.00, etc. Let's take a look at our next image. I'll zoom in. In this image, if we were writing it as a fraction, we would write 5 out of 10 because 5 out of 10 are shaded in. But as a decimal, we can write it as 0.5 or 5/10. The first number to the right of our decimal is the tenths place. And then for our last image, we have 5 out of 100 shaded. And to write 5/100 as a decimal is 0.05. The hundredths place is 2 numbers to the right of the decimal. So 5/100. Let's take a look at our notes. Make sure you're writing with me. Our first step in adding and subtracting decimals is to line up your decimals and write them in evenly. A good rule of thumb is to space each number and have 1 pinky's worth of space between each number. You can see on our notes that we have a little example of spreading out our numbers and decimals evenly. Step number 2, write in a 0 placeholder if needed. You can see in this example, originally we were just adding 2, but to keep our decimals lined up, I added in 2 0 placeholders to make sure everything was super neat and organized. Our next step, step 3, is to add or subtract from right to left. So in our example, the first thing I did is I added 5 plus 5. Okay, so you start on the right-hand side, and we'll practice this in just a second. Then when you solve, you're going to bring the decimal straight down. And lastly, step 5 is to use estimation to ensure your answer is reasonable. So in this example right here, we had 2 plus 1.25 plus 1.05, and I rounded each number to the nearest whole number. So I got 2 plus 1, which is 4. That's an easier problem. And because my sum or my answer was 4.30, that tells me I'm on the right track. If I estimated and I got 400 as my original answer, that would be a red flag and let me know I need to go back and check my work. Let's talk about some keywords for addition. Keywords for addition are sum, make sure you're writing with me. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Sum, in all together, total, and increase. And these aren't the only words. These are just some of them. Let's zoom in on some subtraction keywords. And remember, you can always pause the video if you need more time. Subtraction, difference is a huge keyword for subtraction. What's the difference between two numbers? Minus, decrease, subtract, and fewer than. And then lastly, spent. And similarly, these aren't the only keywords, but here are some of them. Take a look at our examples at the bottom of the page. Let's zoom in on example A. Example A says shade in 1 200ths, then write the sum. Go ahead and underline sum. That's a keyword for adding. One of our learning targets is to add and subtract decimals using a model, so that's what we're going to practice now. So we're going to start by shading in 1 whole. So we're going to shade in the entire grid. Doesn't have to be perfect, but try to make it neat if you can. And then 200ths. So if we're shading 200ths, that's 2 out of 100 boxes. So just 1, 2. And then when we write the sum or the answer, we can just write 1.02 or 1 200ths. Let's go to example B. Example B says, find the sum of 1 200ths and 2 5/10. Let's underline the word sum. And we're going to use the standard algorithm to add 1 200ths and 2 5/10. So we're going to keep a pinky's worth of distance between our numbers to keep them nice and neat. We have 1 200ths plus 2 5/10. Make sure that your decimals are completely lined up, one on top of the other. And then, as we talked about in our notes, we're going to add a 0 placeholder because there's a blank, there's nothing there, and that helps us stay organized. Now we're going to start on our right-hand side. 2 plus 0 is 2. 0 plus 5 is 5. We'll bring down our decimal nice and neat, and 1 plus 2 is 3. So we used the standard algorithm and got 3 52 hundredths as our answer. To check our work, we can go ahead and estimate to make sure we're on the right track. We can round 1 2 hundredths to 1, and we can round 2 5 tenths to 3, and 1 plus 3 is 4. If I have $4, that is close to $3.52, so we are on the right track. Let's look at example C. Example C says write the difference, keyword for subtraction, let's underline it, of 6 45 hundredths and 5. So when we subtract, the order that they give you the numbers is the order that you need to write them. So 6 45 hundredths came first, so we'll write 6 45 hundredths minus 5. Remember, we can write 5 as 5 or 5.0 or 5.00 like we practiced in the opening. Because there's blanks here, let's go ahead and write 5.00 to keep our work nice and neat with 0 placeholders. Then we're going to start on the right-hand side. 5 minus 0 is 5. 4 minus 0 is 4. Bring down our decimal, and 6 minus 5 is 1. So 1 45 hundredths is our answer. But as always, we want to use estimation to check. So I can round 6 45 hundredths to 6. 5 is already rounded for us. It's 5. And 6 minus 5 is 1. If I had $1, that is close to $1.45. Sometimes it helps to think about decimals like money. Complete the first 2 problems on page 2, then come back to the video to check your work. On page 3, we're practicing something really similar to page 2, except now we're subtracting. So whenever we subtract showing a model, we're going to first shade in the first number. Okay, so I'm going to shade in one whole in 24 hundredths. Then I'm going to cross out the second number. So I shaded in 1.24, and I'm going to cross out 1/10. Okay, so I'm just going to cross out this column right here. Remember, a tenth is a row or a column of 10 on the grid. And then your answer is how many boxes are still shaded that are not crossed out. So we did this first problem, or this first part of the directions. Now we're going to use the standard algorithm. So I'm going to go ahead and write super neatly 1 24 hundredths minus 1/10. Don't forget to put your 0 placeholder. 4 minus 0 is 4. 2 minus 1 is 1. Bring down our decimal. 1 minus 0 is 1. And that makes sense because I have 1, and here's another 10 boxes and another 4 boxes. I have 1 14 hundredths boxes that are shaded and not crossed out. Go ahead and complete this next problem on page 3, then come back to the video to check your work. Go ahead and check your work for our second problem, fix any errors. Then complete the rest of page 3 and get feedback from your teacher and check in with them. Come back to the video when you're ready for page 4. Page 4 says, solve using the standard algorithm. Use estimation to check your answer. To make sure you're on the right track, please complete only problems A and B. Pause the video. Come back to the video once you're done A and B to check your work. Check your work for problems A and B. I'll zoom in on A first. Check your work for problem B. Make sure you showed estimation. Then complete the rest of page 4. Check in with your teacher to get feedback, and come back to the video when you're ready for page 5. On page 5, the directions say underline keywords, solve using the standard algorithm, and use estimation to check your answer. Go ahead and complete problems C and D only. Pause the video, come back to the video once you're done C and D to check your work. Let's start by checking C. You should have underlined the keyword altogether. Then we're going to use the standard algorithm to solve. Altogether is a keyword for addition. Go ahead and check your work for the standard algorithm. And then the third thing the directions asked you to do was check your work with estimation. So make sure you included that as well. And then if you want to, you could even write a sentence. How much rice did Jamal buy altogether? Jamal bought 6 3/100 pounds of rice. Let's go ahead and check problem D. On problem D, we're subtracting twice. So we have $300. On Monday, Brittany spent $150.25. And then on Tuesday, she spent $34.56. So technically, we could have underlined this word as well. Okay, so we can start if we want by subtracting 150.25. And so when you did that, here's what you should have gotten: 149.75. Then we'll subtract 34.56 because she spent that on Tuesday. And here's what you should have gotten after you subtracted 34.56. So this is our final answer using the standard algorithm. Now the directions also said to use estimation to check our work. So make sure you have this piece as well. Complete the rest of page 5, then come back to the video when you're ready for page 6. Don't forget to get feedback from your teacher. Complete all of page 6, then come back to the video to check your work. Check your work for our common misconception problem. This video will not go over the closing problems, but please make sure to complete them. And also make sure, as always, to complete our debrief questions. In your own words, what did you learn today? How much effort did you put in during class? Rate yourself 1 through 5. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. And then what do you think is a common misconception a student might make when adding and subtracting decimals? Once you've finished all of page 6, you're going to go back to page number 1. At the beginning of today's lesson, we rated ourselves on our learning targets 1 through 5. Now that we've gotten more practice, rate yourself 1 through 5 under the section after the lesson. Remember, this is on page 1. And as always, don't forget to check in with your teacher and get feedback. Thank you for joining us today at Middle Math Academy, where we practiced adding and subtracting decimals level number 5. This is part of our differentiated series where we have 5 levels of challenge for every topic. If you're looking for any additional practice, make sure to check out levels 1, 2, 3, or 4. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.